Welcome everyone to Buddha's Center. My name is Jeff Allen. Today we're going over once again Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. We're in a wonderful, wonderful section of that text where we see the preliminaries. We have the foundations set up for us that allow us to know how to proceed through the stages of the path. And if we get this part wrong, if we don't understand this foundational part, the later practices will be beneficial in the ways of receiving information and imprints, but really we won't be able to taste them, as His Holiness the Dalai Lama says. We won't have the teeth to really chew them with. So they'll just, when we're eating food, we're very limited to the food we can eat if we have no teeth. So he says, if you don't have teeth, you can't chew them. If we don't have these foundations, if you don't have the wisdom, you won't really be able to understand what the teachings later mean. And even the earlier teachings won't have the same essence that they would if you have an understanding of the greatness of the teaching, the greatness of the author, how to listen into and explain the teachings, and then how you proceed, starting with the reliance upon a teacher. So we've gone through all of those sections, and now we're in the body of the actual instructions of the practice itself. So what a wonderful opportunity to learn the stages of the path as a beginner or an advanced level practitioner, according to Lama Tsongkhapa, because we know every time we look at this text, every time we think about this text, every time we meditate on the Four Noble Truths, we get a different understanding or a more in-depth understanding. And that's why, even though some of this stuff is repetitive, it's the repetition that kind of sinks it into our mind. And the word meditation merely means familiarization. And why do we familiarize? According to the Lamrim Chema, we do it in order to saturate our mind. So our mind can take that topic on in the way that we would take our ABCs on when we're younger. And now we don't have to think about it at all. It becomes part of our mind. It becomes just part of our basic understanding and awareness. And it's for that reason that we really go over these things again and again and again and become so familiar with them that we don't need a book and that we don't need an instruction. We can, allow our minds to be our teacher in a sense, So I think it's just really important that we look at this, not, when we're looking at topics that we might already have an understanding of, that we might be able to even do with our eyes closed. If we look at them sometimes in the text again with our eyes open, we may find out that it changes what we can do with our eyes closed. So I just encourage everyone to just keep going and keep familiarizing yourself with this. I can't even tell you how many times I heard Rinpoche teach the 10 non-virtues and abandoning the 10 non-virtues. How many? I mean, I can't even imagine, 400 times. How many times did he talk about the same thing? We've definitely, in counting, we're over 1,000 teachings I translated. How many times did he talk about the 3 types of beings? Maybe 899 of the 1,000, if not 999, right? So he saw repetition as a real tool for us. And I see at the other side of that experience, oh my gosh, the benefit that I received. And it was really the most benefit I feel. Obviously, I have the imprints of all the stuff, right? But the most benefit that I can say is part of my mind now, or on the cusp of it, has to do with these introductory teachings. And it's these introductory teachings that we're in right now that keep me so invested and keep me not satisfied with my understanding and keep my effort going. And today's a really special instruction that we're going to get into that we've given many times on mindfulness of death, if we get to it. But yeah, so let's get started. Let's get into a posture. That's an intentional posture that will allow us to tell our complete being, our physical and mental being, that now we're doing something in order to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. When we get in this posture called the 7-point Vairocana posture, it allows for our mind to become clear, allows us to sit for long periods of time, and it aligns the channels and so forth in such a way that it'll be beneficial in later periods of meditation as we become more and more advanced. So we're now setting the foundation for us to be able to do the introductory practices in the best way, to be able to have the most clarity in the best way, but then later on be able to do the higher practices and have our body aligned, when we'll be able to use our body as a tool to enlightenment, and not, use it kind of as an aid to our mind's journey to enlightenment. We'll have that foundation set, and we won't have to relearn or kind of train our body. Our body will be trained in such a way, kind of muscle memory, if you will, in a kind of contemporary language. So we're getting that muscle memory now, so that we can just get very comfortably into a position. So the 7-point Vairocana, we put our legs into the Vajra posture if we can, or cross-legged on the floor, however we can. We have our back very straight, like a stack of coins. With our hands in our lap, with our right on our left, with our thumbs touching, making almost a diamond. We have our shoulders in a very comfortable position, allowing whatever that position though is, making sure that our spine is like a stack of coins, as I said, and with our head slightly tilted forward, eyes slightly open at a 45-degree angle, focusing on the tip of the nose. And just slightly open. So the reason we're doing it, if our eyes are open all the way, we can have a lot of distractions, visual distractions. If our eyes are closed, it reminds us of sleeping. So it's for this reason that we have our eyes slightly open at a 45-degree angle. And eventually that consciousness, that eye consciousness, will shut off and will only be focused on the mental consciousnesses, because that's where we do our meditating, in the mental consciousness. Which is separate from the physical consciousness of the eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, and tactile consciousness. Mental consciousness is separate. So we're shutting off those other types of physical consciousnesses when we're doing our meditation, and focusing only on the mind, and using that as our kind of guide through experience. So even if our object of observation is something physical, we're looking at it from the mind. So here we're not looking at something physical with the mind. We're looking at an object of observation of the Buddha, and then we're doing analytical meditation. So we're in that posture with the eyes slightly open, pointing at the nose, put our mouth into a comfortable position. That allows our tongue to be on the top of the roof, with a back right against the teeth. And that allows for our mouth not to dry out, and simultaneously circulate so that it doesn't fill up with saliva. And by breathing through the nose, which becomes the 8th point, it allows for that not to dry out. And all of these things support our ability to meditate for longer and longer periods of time, as our mind is able to do so. So we don't want our body, our physical kind of postures, to be an obstacle to our being able to sit in meditation for long periods of time. Our mind already has enough obstacles. So we don't want our mind to have to kind of cling on to some sort of physical obstacle. So we become very familiar with this physical posture. So now we're going to begin breathing through the nose and focusing our mind on the breath only. As we breathe in, we focus our mind on the inhalation of the breath. And as we breathe out, we focus our mind on the exhale, as well as counting the breath. And we try to focus only on the breathing in and breathing out, and the number counting of the breath. This is just to kind of get our mind into a more neutral state that's free from the distractions that we come in here with, from the attachments and the anger and so forth. We try to shut all of that out and deflect all of those things, and bring it to a core of neutrality, from which we can then build aspiration, we can build virtue from. So we start with that meditation on the breath, which gets us to this kind of core neutrality, and then we can take upon a very virtuous object of observation, which will be Buddha Shakyamuni, and then we'll begin the guided talk, and then we'll start the teaching on the Lamrim. So let's start by meditating on the breath, and then once we get our mind to a little bit more neutral state, we'll add the object of observation of Buddha Shakyamuni. So let's begin by breathing. Now start to imagine Buddha Shakyamuni in the space in front of you, about 2 feet away, eye height, about an inch or two, about the size of your thumb. Beautiful and radiant, a light body, 3-dimensional, alive, but a pure body, not an impure body with blood and bones and skin. A pure light body like a diamond, clothed beautifully in robes. You can imagine Buddha Shakyamuni on a throne supported by 8 snow lions. So let's hold this visualization however we can. Most importantly, thinking of Buddha Shakyamuni as our object of observation while we're still focusing on the breath. Keep our mind calm. How wonderful it is that we can try to make our mind think only about the most holy being there is, a Buddha, a holy being who taught us how to get out of cyclic existence and taught us how to have infinite happiness and bliss. Think about what the Buddha taught. The Buddha first taught the Four Noble Truths. Think about the truth of suffering the Buddha taught. The Buddha stated that this is the superior truth of suffering. Suffering has to be identified. Start to think about your own suffering in your relationship to the 8 types of suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death. Think about the experience of being separated from pleasant things, meeting with unpleasant things, not getting what you want, being forced into these aggregates, these appropriated aggregates that are the basis for all of these different sufferings. We have a physical basis that has pain and a mental basis that has pain because it has the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. Try to relate very deeply to these sufferings, to believe in them. Always know they're our nature if we're in cyclic existence. Think about being a being in a lower realm in the various types of suffering that we learn about. 8 hot hells, 8 cold hells, hungry ghosts and animal. We know the experiences in the human realm. Demigods and gods we can read about. And among these realms, there's no certainty. Our companions that we're with now won't be our companions next time. We'll never find satisfaction in cyclic existence. We'll have to take on bodies and then shuck them off, go to the high realms and the lower realms just mentioned, without companions, suffering again and again, experiencing suffering of suffering, those gross sufferings, the pain we all know about, the general suffering you would think of when you say, what is suffering? I am suffering. This is painful. The suffering of change, which is the bait of cyclic existence we think is happiness, those things that we chase after. And when we get them, sooner or later, we're not satisfied with them. They become a source of our suffering because of our separation from them, or they change. All of these Forms of happiness and cyclic existence have a self-destruct mechanism within them because they're contaminated. I chase them, grab them, grasp at them, and then the door again closes on cyclic existence behind me. And I'm in this prison, in a prison of my own making. And I'll have to be, because of pervasive compounded suffering, the main thing the Buddha taught about the first noble truth, be forced by my karma and afflictions again and again and again into a set of contaminated aggregates, where I'll have to experience all of these things mentioned. And then the Buddha stated that this is the superior truth of origin, and the origin has to be abandoned. Suffering is a result. All results have causes. If there's no cause, there's no result. So the Buddha stated that the origin of all of our sufferings, the 8 sufferings, the 6 sufferings, the 3 sufferings, is ignorance. The Buddha said that our ignorance, that grasps at the I as being truly established, causes us to think wrong, our mind to have afflictions, contaminated actions to happen, and then cyclic existence occurs. The Buddha stated that all my forms of suffering come from this. Then the Buddha very appropriately gave us some good news, because the Buddha first started out by telling us the truth of our existence, and that can be a little painful and a little bit shocking. And then the Buddha said, but all of this can end. This is the superior truth of cessation. Cessation has to be achieved. So the Buddha said, all of this can end. All of this sufferings can end. You don't have to go through any of this. You're making all of this happen. All of this is occurring from your side. This is a subjective experience. And all of these experiences you're having are results. And all of the results that you know in the empirical world have causes. So the Buddha said, then, if you would like to end all of this, you have to rely upon a path. And that's why the Buddha stated that this is the superior truth of path. Path has to be meditated upon. We have to realize the path. The Buddha stated, this is the path that I realized I had to do in order to reach the state that I'm in. The Buddha was a witness because the Buddha was able to accomplish that state. And the Buddha said, this is what I needed to know to do that. I needed to know how to get rid of ignorance, the grasping at the I. And by getting rid of the ignorance which grasps at the I, I'm able to no longer have suffering. So we feel so relieved, feel so happy. We have an opportunity to not have suffering. So we started out thinking about all these various forms of suffering, and it made our self-cherishing attitude feel quite uncomfortable. We thought about how we related to them very closely, those forms of suffering. And now we know that they aren't necessary, that we can kind of plug the leak. We don't have to experience these sorts of things anymore. So we have a sigh of relief for ourselves that we have an opportunity to be free from suffering. And then the Buddha tells us that there's more to it, that if we want to have infinite happiness and bliss, and we want to be the most reliable being that exists, there's a little bit more to it than just getting rid of this ignorance that grasps. The Buddha said that we had to also get rid of our self-cherishing attitude. So then we begin to think about what that would mean and why we would do such a thing. And we know that the self-cherishing attitude has been the cause of all of our downfalls and negativities. We look at self-centeredness. We look at what it's brought to us. We see that it's not really done anything good for us. And the Buddha is reliable because the Buddha says that I have bliss and I have omniscience. I can help everyone. I know what's best. I've reached perfection. So we begin to think about beings. We begin to just start to think about a relationship with sentient beings. We think about our friends. We think about all the different sufferings that we just thought about having to experience, and we realize they have to experience those exact things. The deeper we have an understanding of our own suffering, the deeper we will be able to feel for someone else's suffering. So if you've had some sort of illness, someone else has that illness, you can relate to them and feel for them more deeply, right? Than someone maybe who doesn't. It's just a more natural connection. So if you have this really intense feeling about all the various forms of suffering that there are, that you have now, can have, or have had, then that allows you to relate and really want to care for another in a more deep way. So this is the reason we talk about suffering and impermanence so much. It's so that we can relate to others eventually in a much more deep way by knowing that we all have the same illness. So you start to think about your friends, all those people who are close to you, your loved ones, that they have the same illness that you do, and think about how, man, I wish that they could be, free also. I want to be free. I don't want to get out of this. So you have this desire to definitely emerge for yourself. And now you think, man, they should really want to have this desire to emerge. So you just start to think about, first of all, your friends having to experience this pain, neutrals having to experience this pain, just strangers, people that you don't really know their names, or you maybe know their name, but don't really know much about them. They're strangers. Think about them having to experience this. Think about the people that you dislike or you say are your enemies. Think about if that's really a realistic label. If since beginningless time we've had every relationship with every sentient being, we've just merely forgotten those relationships. If that being that we call our enemy now was kinder to us than anyone we've ever known, but they're just merely under the influence of their karma and afflictions right now and behaving in a way that collides with my ability to receive something that makes me label them an enemy because of my karma and afflictions. So we're both out of control in this experience that we're having. I'm mislabeling that person who's out of control because they're out of control in a way that I dislike at that moment. But I really liked it when they were out of control and they were caring for me. So I just start to undo all of these labels and begin to think about wanting to benefit everyone equally, having an equal desire to benefit everyone. So then we start to think how nice it would be if all sentient beings, based on my desire, based on knowing that I want to get out of cyclic existence so bad, because I understand it so well now, they aren't any different. How nice it would be if all sentient beings had happiness and the causes of happiness. May they have that happiness. I'll be a cause for that happiness. May the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas bless me to be able to, have the courage and strength to bring them happiness. Then we think how nice it would be if all sentient beings could be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. I'll be a cause for them to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas please bless me to be able to have the strength to be able to be part of that cause. And then we decide that we're going to take on this task. We're going to bring all sentient beings to a state of happiness that's free from suffering. Today, right now, we're going to do it. And then we recognize we really can't do that. We're in cyclic existence ourselves. We have afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience. We aren't reliable guides. We're not able to help them in a complete way because we ourselves are stuck. We don't know what their individual aptitude is. We don't know their individual needs. And only an omniscient being would be able to help each and every sentient being according to their individual needs. And not only can I not help all sentient beings, I haven't been able to help myself. And here I sit only knowing that a truth exists, but I haven't tasted that truth to be able to be of benefit in a most complete way to others. So at this point, we recognize we must become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. So we really think about this thought. We just had the idea that I must take on the task of freeing them all. Now our desire is just as strong to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. So we say to ourselves, may I become a Buddha for the sake of every being that exists. So now we set our motivation. Why are we here today? Why are we at this teaching on the Great Treatise on the Stage of the Path to Enlightenment? We're here in order to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Why are we listening to the Heart Sutra, the implicit? Why are we thinking about the implicit and explicit meanings of the Heart Sutra? We're doing so in order to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Everything that we're doing, from the mandala offering to the refuge prayer, to the final mandala offering and dedication prayers and long life prayers, we're doing to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Let that saturate your mind. Now, with that motivation, begin to think that all the gurus, Buddhas, and bodhisattvas are in the space in front of you. Imagine that Khyentse Geshe Wanda, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, all the wonderful gurus, Geshe Aga, Umzela, and Geshe Ma Tenzin Ladrin, holy beings like Dema Locho Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, all these great beings, whatever lamas or gurus you have connections to that you find holy, all the beings of the extensive deeds lineage, all the beings of the profound view lineage. Imagine that we see Lord Atisha and Lama Tsongkhapa and all the great beings of the Nyingma, Kagyu, Sakya, and Galup lineages, and all the great Indian masters that fall into all of those traditions. Imagine that all of the deities are present of the highest yoga tantra, performance tantra, and action tantra. Imagine that all of the 35 Buddhas are present. Imagine that all the protector deities are present. Imagine that all Arya beings are present in however grand a fashion you can imagine. So you imagine that there's just an eruption of just radiance in the space in front of you. Because all the holy beings you can imagine are there, and they're all so full of joy because we're at a teaching. Khyentse Geshe Wandak is there, and he's so full of joy that we're engaging in what he cared about so much, and he cared so deeply about, and he asked us to keep doing. So we feel so happy that we're doing that, and we're making all the gurus, Buddhas, and bodhisattvas so joyful. We're making a holy being rejoice. We're making a holy being happy. And when we engage in virtue, when we make others happy, that's such a virtuous deed. So we feel so good about what we're doing right now because we know we're making the greatest beings that there are so happy. So we're thinking like this. Then we imagine that if we can with our hands, we imagine we, emanate countless hands and grab all sentient beings, and the hell hungry ghost animal, human, demigod, and God's realms, and we bring them all around us, and we're leading them here, and we're going to lead them in prayer. And we imagine that they're all around us. All the beings in all the realms are brought to this space surrounding us. Now all the gurus and Buddhas and bodhisattvas start to have like an intense amount of bliss that you see coming over the entire field in front of you, because now they see all sentient beings are in the space in front of them, and they see every single sentient being doing exactly what they want every sentient being to do. The Buddha's only desire is for us to achieve Buddhahood. So the Buddha teaches us various different things in order to eventually achieve the state of Buddhahood. And all the gurus, Buddhas, and bodhisattvas know that all sentient beings at this moment are doing exactly what they need to do in order to achieve Buddhahood. So an immense amount of bliss comes over the entire field that you can feel in front of you. And then you imagine that light rays and nectar in the color of white, red, and blue start to just radiate out of all of these beings. So now imagine that yourself and all sentient beings around you have a white Om on your crown, a red ah at your throat, and a blue hum at your heart. Om representing your body, red ah representing your speech, and blue hum representing your mind. So imagine that you and all sentient beings have those syllables on your body at those places. So now imagine that the light rays and nectars that are white, red, and blue are turning into and showering down on you and all sentient beings, almost like snow in a blizzard, seed syllables of Om Ah Hum. So you imagine that the white light rays and nectar start to shower down and transform into Om syllables that are white and dissolve into the crowns of us and all ours and all sentient beings. Crown and imagine that then all of ours and all sentient beings body is purified. Now we imagine that red light rays nectars transform into red Oz and go to ours and all sentient beings throat and purify ours and all sentient beings speech. Now we imagine that blue light rays and nectars come down and turn into seed syllable hums that are blue and go to our hearts where our hums are and all sentient beings hums are, and imagine that all ours and all sentient beings minds are purified. So white ohms with white rays and nectars, red ahs with red light rays and nectars, and blue hums with blue light rays and nectars. So we imagine that this is becoming a very intense situation that's going on where there's just almost a blizzard of blessings happening to us and all sentient beings. And now we imagine this is going on as we recite these prayers, as we hear this teaching, and so on and so forth. So we don't want to make the visualization as we're listening to the teaching or doing the prayers to be too distracting. But the more that we can visualize and imagine this, the more blessings we receive because the motivation is just so great, and our holy objects are just so immense at that point because we're hearing teachings and we're having these holy beings all around us. That it's so powerful. So as much of this as we can hold, we hold. Now we imagine that we're leading all sentient beings in the Heart Sutra. The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha monks and a great gathering of the Sangha bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination, and at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita? Dressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way. Seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form. Emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics, there is no birth and no cessation, there is no impurity and no purity, there is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I dhatu up to no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind conscious dhatu, no ignorance, no ignorance up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering, should be known as truth, since there is no deception. Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way. Deyada om gade gade varagade parazangadi bodhisatyada om gade gade varagade parazangadi bodhisatyada gade, varagade, varazangadi bodhisvadyada, ongade gade, varagade, varazangadi bodhisvadyada, ongade gade, varagade, varazangadi bodhisvaha. Thus Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Gala jibe ne jodamba ne nguje du ju nga yi du do jen zhu ba ba la ma yi bu jin zi ne zong an zhe zo la sha zi lo aga samara de shana ra samara yebe. Aga samara de shana ra samara yebe di adong gati gati barakati barasangati bodizo baba gonjo sanji kai de me doji she lo badoji me badoji shi badoji ragi baji me de me je danji je dingo ye zo gerin don ja je je wa da me don ne be jen dan je wa dan don ba don je bon don jo ji da ji de jan den da de le jo. The mandala offering is a request for teaching. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas High, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Idam Guru Radha Mandala Gam Niradayami. Ganye Jadanda Ye Janala Janyu Badu Danye Jazuji Dagi Juje Jibe Sananji. Jola Benje Zanye Rubaju Zanye Jadanda Ye Janala. Janju Badu Danye Jazuji Dagi Juje Jibe Sananji. Jola Benje Zanye Rubaju Zanye Jadan Zanye Janala Janju Badu Danye Jazuji Dagi Juje Jibe Sananji. Jola Benje Zanye Rubaju. the one who has transformed into the reliable guide, motivated by altruism to benefit sentient beings, the teacher, Sugata, the protector to you, I make prostrations. The one who has eliminated the web of conceptualizations and is endowed with the divine bodies of the vast and the profound, who internally shines forth the forever noble light rays, to you, the Buddha, I make prostrations. Inspired by wisdom, compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind of full awakening for the benefit of sentient beings. May this teaching be heard and understood in the language of all sentient beings. So wonderful we're all together again today to listen to the Lamrim teachings. We benefited so much from Khenser Geshe Wandak's over a decade, right, of teaching us this great text. And so we've gone through a good portion of the beginning in terms of the 4 divisions, if we look at the Lamrim outline, beginning with the greatness of the teacher, and then the greatness of the teaching, or the greatness of the author, and then the greatness of the teaching, and then how to listen to and explain the instructions, and then how to lead students in the actual instructions. So we're at that 4th category of how to lead students in the actual instructions. We've gone over relying on a spiritual guide, and we come to find out that the foundation of all of our excellent qualities is the teacher. Relying on a qualified teacher is so important. And Lama Tsongkhapa, begins to show us what a teacher should look like in the actual how to listen to and explain the instruction section, where he shows us how one is to give a teaching. So we have a general kind of understanding of it that we've been giving it at the point of how teaching should be given. And then Lama Tsongkhapa shows us the kind of teacher we should rely on and explains why relying on the teacher is of the utmost importance. And we know that whenever we want to become adept in any subject, we want to learn a subject that we don't know anything about, it's necessary for us to have a teacher that will teach us that subject, and we want to find the best teacher that's possible. So Lama Tsongkhapa, using Maitreya as Mahayana Sutra Alamkara and other sources, shows us what a qualified teacher is and why having a qualified teacher is so important. And then Lama Tsongkhapa goes into a very interesting section that I've always said is so overlooked on the meditation section, and then refuting misconceptions about meditation, where we see Lama Tsongkhapa show us, what we should do in terms of the 6 preparations, how we get ready for an actual meditation session, what we should do. We went over the 6 preparations very well. And then after you do the 6 preparations and you sit down on your cushion, once you're there, after you've done these 6 preparations, how do you go about doing the meditation on these topics? And Lama Tsongkhapa says that we are very specific about what we're going to meditate on. We meditate on that and just that, and we should be focusing specifically on certain topics that relate to where we are at on the path, so that we can keep moving forward on the path, because without the foundation of the earlier realizations, the latter realizations don't work. So Lama Tsongkhapa starts to get us into the habit of becoming very familiar with and realizing topics in the order that they are presented. Because the Lama Tsongkhapa presented the Lamrim in stages. That's why it's called the stages of the path to enlightenment. First you do this, then you do that, then you become familiar with that, and then you become familiar with that, and all these things become foundations for your eventual arisal of Buddhahood. So it's very important that we don't just say, oh, these earlier topics seem so easy to understand from an intellectual perspective, and think just because we have a kind of some surface level understanding that we've realized them, if they haven't saturated our mind, then we won't produce renunciation. If we don't produce renunciation, we won't produce bodhicitta. If we don't produce bodhicitta, then it's not possible to become a Buddha, because bodhicitta is the entrance into the Mahayana, and the Mahayana doctrine, the Mahayana path, is the only path that leads to Buddhahood. If we're missing the part of bodhicitta and we merely have wisdom, if we don't have the union of method and wisdom, yes, we could be free from cyclic existence, but we wouldn't have the most subtle level of the self-cherishing attitude abandoned because we won't have practiced bodhicitta. And without abandoning that most subtle level of the self-cherishing attitude that comes from charity, that abandonment that comes from the bodhicitta, we won't be able to become Buddhas. So even though we could end our suffering with wisdom and end up, in a nirvana where we're abiding, we would be incomplete in terms of our chance. We wouldn't have all of our qualities that we could have complete because we wouldn't have even our own needs fulfilled. Because we'd still have obstructions to omniscience, let alone the needs of all sentient beings, because we wouldn't be reliable guides and wouldn't know how to help them. So Lama Tsongkhapa says, this is how you meditate on these stages. This is how you become very clear on them, and you have to analyze them. It's a misconception to think that conceptuality is an obstacle to realization. Conceptuality is necessary for realization. So Lama Tsongkhapa starts to then in the refuting misconceptions about meditation section, show us how we have to use analysis. And then we combine our analysis, we combine our analytical meditation with fixed meditation. And then we can become very good at looking at the subject in a more and more subtle way, in a more focused way, to the point where we can have just a union of that kind of calm abiding and that wisdom of special insight eventually. So Lama Tsongkhapa shows us that there's some schools that would say that you can't, use analysis, and analysis or conceptuality isn't helpful. And Lama Tsongkhapa refutes that understanding and says there's analytical meditation and there's fixed meditation. Both are necessary, both are required on the path. And the analytical meditation will be required for us to realize these subjects, because we'll have to know them so thoroughly. And he says that when we're thinking about things, we've really got to make sure that we're only thinking about the subject we've focused our mind on. This is about getting control of our mind and telling our mind what to do for once. Our mind is always just doing what it wants. And we're just kind of like being, led around by it in a way. Now we're being more conscientious, and we're telling our mind what to do, specifically what to think about, so we can actually change our mind. So that's the goal of all of this, all of these exercises. The dog can't get out of the room. That's the goal of all of these exercises that we're doing. Not to get the dog out of the room, is to get control of our mind. So once we can get control of our mind, then we can really make it do what we want and look at what we want and focus on what we want and stop focusing on stupidity, start focusing on intelligent things. And when I say stupidity, if we look at the decisions that we make on a daily basis and what we focus our time on a daily basis, if we look at that in the mirror of the Dharma and we compare the two things, we aren't always making the best decisions for our future spiritual maturity, right? So it's for that reason that we have to try to mold our mind into something else. The teachings on Lojong and the Lam Rim say our mind is kind of like a gold, right? If it looks like something, but you melt it down and start again, you can mold it into whatever you want, because it's pliable. It's not a substance that's in the nature of ignorant. It's in the substance in the nature of clear light, right? It could go either way, right? It could go either way. So what do you want to mold your mind into? What do you, so right now, if you look at the Dharma and you start to analyze it and you think that it's logical, you see that our mind has the potential to be molded into a Buddha mind. We have Buddha nature, so we can become a Buddha. But the way we look at everything is wrong. We look through the lens of grasping at true establishment. We look through the lens that doesn't understand karma, right? So everything that we're looking at, we're having a misunderstanding with all of the time. So that misunderstanding that we're having all of the time with reality all around us is causing us to misbehave and so forth within the environment and surroundings that we're having that behavior in. So I don't want to get off track. Let me stay on point here. So once we get past the section on refuting misconceptions about meditation, we see that analysis is important. We're going to tell our minds what to do for the first time. We're going to start to look through a lens that isn't so misguided. And we look in the mirror of the Dharma and we see that we've been looking through a lens which is misguided all of this time. And we realize that we have to find then a way to start looking through a lens that is clear, looking through a lens that sees things without such a misconception. So how do we do that? We find a teacher, and we have to find a really good teacher. So that reinforces, we do this meditation session. It's right after relying on the teacher, and it reinforces that. And it shows us how to meditate on each and every topic in the Lam. So we have these first two sections right after relying on the teacher in the section on how to lead students through the actual instructions. And the point of it is so that we know what to do with each of these topics as we go through. And then we get next to the human life of leisure and opportunity. So we start to become so grateful for this human basis that we have. We can study the Dharma. We can become a Buddha with this human basis. It's the greatest basis from which to engage in these practices. We know that the bodhisattvas who are already in some of the higher realms pray to be born into the system that we're in as humans, because the opportunity is here to hear about suffering and see suffering and really build compassion in a strong way. And for us, it's such a great opportunity to build renunciation, because we've tasted those 6 sufferings and the 8 sufferings, and we know what those 3 sufferings are in this realm. If we were in the God's realm and everything was way too pleasant, we wouldn't have an experience of these kinds of suffering that make us want to definitely emerge, make us want to get out of cyclic existence. So we have this human basis, and we have this opportunity. We have the internal and external opportunities. If we look at them, we can concur that we, at least generally speaking, if we look at those 10 opportunities we have them. And generally, and we definitely have the 8 leisures. So we're so fortunate. We have this human basis from which we don't have a block to us being able to practice. The teachings are here. We had a great teacher. The teacher that we still have a great teacher in Khensa Rinpoche, because all of the videos are still there. He passed down a lineage that was so pure to me, and I feel so fortunate to be able to share just a tiny bit of it with you. So we have these teachings here. We have this opportunity. And as human beings, we can practice it. So we get this gratitude, and we reach this section where we're just so happy to be human. And this is what, if we've meditated on this a lot, and we know how good we have it as a human, we wake up every day with this gratitude that we have this human basis. So we already went over leisure and opportunity. Next section deals with a quick overview. Lama Tsongkhapa says, you have this basis of leisure and opportunity. Let me tell you what you could do with it. He says, here you go. Here, let me show you what you can do with this life of leisure and opportunity. We have the teaching shared in common with beings of small capacity. We have the teaching shared in common with beings of medium capacity. And then we have the teachings for beings of great capacity. Now, of course, Lama Tsongkhapa goes into great detail about these categories as we go through the Lam Rim, right? There's the sections. The teachings for beings of small, medium, and great capacity that Lama Tsongkhapa has laid out in the Lam Rim. But here he gives you a taste of what you can do with this human basis. And Lama Tsongkhapa says, if you want to rely on the teachings that are shared in common with beings of small capacity, then you can be free from the lower realms of cyclic existence. You can be free from the hell, hungry, ghost, and animal realm. Oh, incredible. If you've studied the hell, hungry, ghost, and animal realm, and if you kind of think this is, good place to be to study Dharma and so forth, then you definitely want to emerge from that. You definitely want to. And then, this sets up, you won't. So you definitely want to emerge from that. So then you see Lama Tsongkhapa says, if you engage in the practices of going for refuge, the ethics, which abandons the 10 non-virtuous activities, and then you engage in a confession of negativities that you do if you do waver, because no one's perfect. then you'll be able to be free from the lower realms of cyclic existence. So the Buddha said to go for refuge and abandon this non-virtue, and you could be free from those lower realms of cyclic existence. So Lama Tsongkhapa says, Lord Atisha put these things, Lord Atisha says, understand in the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, understand there are persons of three capacities, small, medium, and great. I shall write clearly to identify their characteristics. So Lama Tsongkhapa now says, you have this human life of leisure. And like Atisha says, you can engage in this. And if you're someone who wants to just be free from the lower realms, you can engage in these practices. And it's not just, hey, you just don't like the lower realms. You understand that this human basis is the best place from which to practice the Dharma. So your mind has to know in your future life, in a saturated way, you don't want to be in the lower realms. Even if you can't realize this renunciation, right? Even if you don't get to the point where you get to your mind that wants to definitely emerge from everything, if you can have it saturated that you want to be free from the lower realms, now you've got a chance to have the basis from which you can practice the Dharma again. So this isn't some like silly thing that we can just disregard. We have to have this in our mind stream so firm and believe it, that we just so want to be free from these lower realms. Because we can't, it would be obvious. If you can't have a mind that wants to be out of half of it, 6 realms, how could you get renunciation? If you skip over half of cyclic existence, how would you get renunciation? So of course you have to renounce the lowest and then renounce the highest. It just makes sense. It's logical. And that's what's so beautiful about the Dharma, is that it's so logical. Nobody is asking you just to have blind faith. They're saying these things are very logical. So we first get a desire to definitely emerge from the lower realms of cyclic existence. And this is the teaching shared in common with beings of small capacity. And then Lama Tsongkhapa said, if this doesn't grab you, if this doesn't satisfy you, Atisha said, there are the teachings that are shared in common with beings of medium capacity. If you find what you heard about the higher realms of cyclic existence, which you are in right now as a human, you're in one of the 3, there's the human demigods and gods, and you're a human. If you find this dissatisfying, if you find the 8 sufferings, the 6 sufferings, and the 3 sufferings dissatisfying, then there is a teaching for you, because you can get out of all of it. You can be free from suffering. You can achieve an abiding nirvana. And to do so, you would engage in these teachings shared in common with beings of medium capacity, which we find the presentation of the 3 highest higher trainings. We find the presentation of the 4 Noble Truths and the 12 links of dependent origination, etc., and the practice of the 3 highest higher training that serves as the vehicle that leads to this abiding nirvana in the teaching shared in common with beings of medium capacity. And generally we would say the Hinayana vehicle, and in the Hinayana there's hearers and solitary realizers. So the abiding nirvana of the hearer and solitary realizer vehicle. If you're interested in that, his hand and brochure is out. Then you have these teachings shared in common with beings of medium capacity, and you can do that with this human basis you have. So it's very smart. Lama Tsongkhapa tells you have this thing that can do it, and here's what you can do with it. You could be free from cyclic existence altogether. You could be free from samsara. So then next, Lama Tsongkhapa says, or Suma, whoever you're listening to at this point. Suma was the dog, if anybody is new, that stood next to Rinpoche his final years of his life and protected him like a mother would, and loved him so much. And Rinpoche loved him so much. So she hangs around and likes to hear the teaching. She's a very unique pit bull, but sometimes she likes to get the attention on her, as we all do, right? Why were you taking the attention off me, Suma? So Lama Tsongkhapa said we could get out of cyclic existence altogether by engaging in the teaching shared in common with beings of medium capacity. And then Lama Tsongkhapa said, if this doesn't grab you, if you want to do what I did, right? If you want to become a Buddha, if you want to not only be free from suffering, but you want to have infinite happiness, you want to know what bliss feels like, if you want to know what the completion of your abilities and your abilities would feel like, then Buddhahood's for you. And if that's what you're interested in, Lama Tsongkhapa says, here's the brochure because it's not the full teaching, right? It's just like a synopsis in this particular section. He says, here's a little brochure on the teachings for beings of great capacity. And if you want to achieve the state of Buddhahood, you'll have to practice the teaching shared in common with beings of small capacity, the teaching shared in common with beings of medium capacity, and then you'll have to generate the mind that aspires to enlightenment, generate bodhicitta, and engage in the bodhisattva path. And you unite that wisdom, the same wisdom that understands the Madhyamika Prasangika view, because we know that if a hearer solitary realizer is in nirvana, they've realized the Madhyamika Prasangika view. They haven't realized a partial view. But Buddha says that if we can realize, if that view is combined with bodhicitta, this love for others, this immense care for others, then it pushes you into Buddhahood. So if you generate bodhicitta and you're as a bodhisattva, you have that wisdom. If you combine method and wisdom, you won't be, what a bodhisattva would call imprisoned by abiding nirvana. You'll be able to be a Buddha and help everyone. You won't be stuck in a state of your own happiness. It isn't even complete, isn't even the highest happiness that you can have, because you still have obstructions to your highest happiness. So the Buddha said, if you are interested in having the highest happiness, the highest bliss, and being free from suffering, being the most reliable guide, then this is what you practice. You practice these teachings shared in the teachings for beings of great capacity, which begin with bodhicitta, which begin at the path of accumulation, if we're going to be technical, beginning at the small level among the three of the path of accumulation. So, so fantastic that Lama Tsongkhapa tells us we have a human basis, and then has a little chapter on here's what you can do with it, and then gives us some bad news. So Lama Tsongkhapa tells us there's an urgency here. And what does that mean? There's an urgency here. Well, the urgency is that we are going to die. There's impermanence. You are a result, and you're the kind of impermanent, you're a result that came from a cause, and you're of the type of impermanence that will come to an end, because you're that kind. And there's different kinds of impermanence. There's impermanence that just keeps going until something puts a stop to it. And then there's impermanence that, things that just naturally will come to an end. And we know as a human being, 100 years or so is pretty maxed out, right? And, dying in the womb is common. So we really only have this very, very small amount of time to practice. So Lama Tsongkhapa says so cleverly, now I have to tell you, there's a sense of urgency. You've got to make as much effort as you can. And here's why. You have these incredible teachings from an incredible lineage. You know how to listen to them. You know how they should be explained. You may even have an instructor who can explain them clearly. You have a basis from which you can practice them. You know how to meditate on them. I'm going through like the Lamrim, he said it in the order. You know how to meditate on them now. I've told you how. You've got the misconceptions about meditation out. You have this great basis. You can do it, but there's some urgency. And then Lama Tsongkhapa includes the 3 roots and 9 reasons, the death meditation. And Lama Zopa Rinpoche says that all of the effort he makes comes from this death meditation. He says that, when asked, why are you day and night doing what you do? What was the most effective practice? What did you find to be most helpful? And he said it was this practice. So I know we've gone over this so many times, but we've landed in the Lamrim Chemo in this exact section. So I'd love to share this practice once again with you. So we would do this practice. How? Just as Lama Tsongkhapa set us up, 6 preparations. We go into a room, we clean it, we arrange images of enlightenment. We put out offerings beautifully, number 2. So the 6 preparations. 1, clean the room, put out images of enlightenment. 2, Put out, I'm sorry, clean the room, put out images, enlightenment, 1. Number 2, put out offerings that you've obtained honestly. Number 3, sit down, get into a meditative posture with a clear mind. Make sure your mind's clear. Number 3. Number 4, imagine the merit field in front of you, all the holy beings, all the gurus, buddhas, and bodhisattvas and spaces in front of you. Number 5, make a 7-limb prayer. Number 6, make a mandala offering and all of the, make further aspirations and so forth. And now you're sitting on your meditation cushion and you've now are a master of relying on a teacher. You've mastered this and you've mastered human leisure and opportunity. And now you are mastering the next topic. So now you're going to take this topic of death and impermanence and think only about that. So Lama Tsongkhapa said, now when you get on your cushion, you're going to tell your mind what to do. Now you're going to tell your mind to only think about these 9 things and let them saturate your mind so you know that that is they're true beyond a shadow of a doubt. So you're going to sit down and not think about, like I said last week, you can be thinking of death and impermanence, and I'm definitely going to die. I've really got to seize the day. What am I going to do today? I think maybe I'll go to the beach today. I got to take advantage of this impermanence, and maybe I'll go sailboat. You see how, the mind, even on a holy topic that will allow you to get renunciation, can drive itself to the beach and start thinking about something completely different. And it's just a segue out of your meditation topic. Oh, I've got to seize the day. Death will come, right? And your self-cherishing attitude can worm its way out of renunciation and putting others' needs before yourself really quickly and get right back to cherishing itself more than anything else, and push the object of meditation out that will actually get rid of that self-cherishing and actually make you not have to suffer again, because that self-cherishing is what makes us suffer so much. So we get on that cushion and we start to think about very, very worldly facts. We're not thinking of something like the Madhyamika Prasangika view versus the Svatantrika view right now. We're thinking about something that is going to strike our hearts, hopefully. So we begin, the first root is that death will come. So the first reason, so each of these roots, so there's 3 roots, 3 headings, and then there's 3 reasons that makes for a total of 9. So the first is that we're definitely going to die. Death will come and nothing can stop it, is the first reason. We're going to die is the header. Death will come and nothing can stop it. So we look at all of the great beings. We look at Khensur Geshe Wandak had to leave this world. Such a realized being. Rinpoche used to say George Washington, so famous. Everyone knows who George Washington is. His greatness didn't keep him alive. It doesn't matter who you are, how great you are, how much fame you have, how much reputation you have. The good things that you've done in this life and your reputation about them, the only thing that you bring with you is the virtue and non-virtue that you've done. And you don't, all this reputation and name is going to go away in the snap of a finger when your karma no longer allows for you to be in this position as a human. Death will definitely come. When the karma no longer has that power, Rinpoche used to say it's like shooting an arrow in the air. Right now, our arrow is going up. We have a human basis, but sooner or later, the karma that's allowing for an arrow to go, the power or the whatever you call it, that allows the arrow to go up, loses its power. Likewise, the power of our karma loses its power to keep us as humans, and then we perish. And it happens no matter what. So this is the first topic, is that death will come and there's nothing that can stop it. There's not any special practice other than a complete liberation that will stop our death. So nothing can stop it. And the next is that we have so many things that are contributing to our death, and so few things that are contributing to our life. I'm sorry, life is always being subtracted from and never added to. I apologize, I jumped into the next category. So when we look at, so we know that death will definitely come, first reason, and then life is being subtracted from, and it's never being added to. We see that every moment we look at the subtle impermanence, we're always moving closer to our death. We're aging subtly every moment. And we aren't heading away from the moment that we'll die. So we meditate on that every moment we're heading closer and closer to our death. And then we won't have a time to practice Dharma as number 3. We put it off because we don't really think about that we're definitely going to die and we're always moving closer to our death. We don't actually apply ourselves to the Dharma. We think, oh, tomorrow I'll do it. And then tomorrow becomes 10 years later. And then we think, well, once I get a little more mature and older, I really want to experience life now. I don't have time for all of this study, all of this meditation. I'll do it every other day. And those years add up, and eventually we're on our deathbed wondering why we didn't practice the Dharma. And this is just very natural. Human beings don't believe we're going to die. And this is why death and impermanence is such a central subject for Buddhism. It's not to be morbid. It's because we don't really believe we're going to die at our core. Not today. We don't think today we're definitely going to die, or there's a chance. Does anyone really right now, like, yeah, I think there's a good chance I may die today, right? Like, that's not something we really walk around with. Like, we kind of know it. And as we get older, it becomes more and more real, I think. If we get older, I think we experience more and more loss around us. It becomes, we taste it more. But I can just remember being 17, 18, and I didn't believe it could end. I did outrageous things, that would, oppose conventional thought in terms of what you would do to, with this basis. And I didn't get it. I didn't think there was any way I could die. And I still have such a strong feeling that this is going to be forever, right? That this Jeff's just going to go on and on and on. I feel so strong that this Jeff's so Jeffy, that I'm just going to always just be this Jeff. And this meditation helps me start to cut that down too, this grasping at Jeff. So it sets up my ability to meditate on emptiness also. And it sets up how emptiness helps me understand things. It helps me understand karma, right? It helps me understand how understanding karma makes me seize the day. So we first realize death will come, nothing can stop it. Life is being subtracted from and never added to. And we won't have time to practice Dharma. So these are the 3 reasons. The next root is that we don't know when we're going to die. So then the first reason is lifespan's not fixed in Jambu Viva, getting fancy, where we live in the southern continent, according to that cosmology. Lifespan's not fixed. And we know that. We see that, unfortunately, people die very, very young. People die, like I said, in the womb, unfortunately. And then some people live to be 100, and I think I saw somebody 111 recently, like maxing it out, super maxing it out. But you've got who knows when, right? Kind of area that you're looking at. And unfortunately, you don't know when. In other realms, apparently, you do know you have 500 years to live, and you can start to count it down. You can kind of say, well, I'm going to take a few years to do this or that. And then I'll put my Dharma off for later, but we don't have that luxury. That would be a dumb luxury for that being to engage in, right? Because you want to take advantage of every moment that you have for Dharma. So in some ways, this opportunity we have, if we seize it and we can live a long life, if we seize this idea about death and impermanence, we'll take advantage of every moment of this life. And if it's long, then wow, what we did with it, right? So now we get to this idea that lifespan's not fixed in Jambu Viva where we live. So we don't know when we're going to die. The first reason, lifespan's not fixed. Second reason, life is always, in terms of our causes and conditions, There's a lot more causes for us to die than there are causes for us to live. It's very easy for this body to die. Look, think about how many things could kill you today, right? Think about how many things could make you live longer today, right? You know, maybe there's like some new vitamin regimen that they say, if, you know, we have the karma and the vitamins, you know, serve as conditions in medicine. I'm not saying vitamins can't make you live longer. I'm saying, you know, if you have the karma, that medicine can make you live longer. All right. So there's that. Maybe there's maybe exercise, but then people have a heart attack running sometimes. But exercise is definitely, for the most part, something that could make you live longer. But you know, I'm okay. That's a couple things. Eat well. Now let's get to the list of how many things that could kill me today. I just bleed a little bit too much. I get hit a little too hard, right? Some organ in my body think about all the malfunctions that could suddenly happen. A clot in any vessel, right? Any blood suddenly occurs, and that's it. Heart stops working, something in the lung stops going, maybe the wrong COVID, maybe I get the old COVID, right? You know, like the first strain. Like, it's like, really, we don't know. There's so many causes for our death out there, and causes for our life are so few, you know, so few. So we're doing this. This is the number 5 of the 9, if we're counting like that, and it's the second among the 3. And then the third, the second among the second among the 3. The third among the second among the 3 is this body is insignificant, right? This is our stuff here. This thing's so good. We polish it. We cut its hair. We put it on makeup sometimes, right? We put on special clothes. We make sure that they look good, so our body is covered, because we want it to look so good when everyone sees this body coming up to them, and it's going to just last forever, and it's so special. Not really. It's not. As you get older, you start to realize kind of like, it's not so great. It's kind of dirty, and it's really not as fancy as I thought. And yeah, it hurts a lot. Yeah, it hurts a lot. I can't even stand up straight right away. It's starting to look pretty insignificant compared to how strong it seemed to be before. You know, we were thinking, like, when you were a little kid and you like fell off a thing and like fell down a thing, rolled off, and like, you're like, that kid's got to be dead. And he's like, I'm okay. Now it's like, I can't get up. You know, if I like trip and slowly fall down, you know, so the body is insignificant. This thing just deteriorates. It deteriorates every day. If you get lucky enough to get old, you will be withered and decrepit and not be able to probably walk and have the same. If you get the luxury of getting to be as old as you can, you probably won't be able to walk. Talking will be hard. You're going to have a hard time breathing right before you pass away. And it's because this body kind of stinks. It's insignificant. It's not as great as we think it is. It's easy to kill. It's easy to die. So we meditate on that, and that starts to obviously kind of, we detach from how great this body is. We detach from this idea we'll live forever. So this is what we're trying to get to. The last of the 3 categories, the only thing that can help us is Dharma. So, okay, what are those categories? Our friends can't help us. The time of death, people will be there and compassionate, maybe even a good spiritual guide, but no one can cross that barrier of alive to not with us. And really, the only thing we bring with us is the virtue and the non-virtue that we engaged in, right? Those are our companions at that point. Our companions are our karma. That's our buddy. We have one, one on each arm, virtue and non-virtue. Our two buddies we bring with us. Those are our companions. If you look at it, like you look over to your right and your left, you have virtue and non-virtue you're bringing with you. It's wild, right? Can't bring your friends with you. You bring your virtue and non-virtue. So then you start to think, my second of the third, material things can't help. Has anyone brought their bank account with them to their next life? No. Even the greatest teacher that I know, I watched him leave all of his money in a box, and I sent it to India and different places. He didn't get to bring his money with him. The holiest being I know of, material things didn't help them. Not that they didn't have them. They had definitely renounced them, could care less about them, but didn't bring them with them. And you know why that being was able to die so peacefully, pass so peacefully, Kensur Geshe Wandak? It's because he had renunciation and he knew material things couldn't help. That's why a being that's so holy can be on their deathbed and have no regrets, have no fear, no worries. It's because of the realization of these things, recognizing that this money can't help, can't bring my house, can't bring my car. All these things I think are so great and so fancy. They can't help me as I'm dying. Nothing. Maybe put me in a nicer hospital. I'm still gonna die. Definitely. I saw the greatest teams in the world trying to make Rinpoche live 10 more minutes. No, wasn't his time. His time was up. My time with him was up. That's what I can say. My time with him was up. Because it's subjective, right? My time with him was up in that form, right? And then we recognize the last step, that the only thing that can help us is the Dharma, right? Only thing we bring with us is our virtue and non-virtue. Where did we learn to practice more virtue if we want a better life? It's the Dharma. Our engagement in the things that will cause us to experience opportunity in the future. That's the only thing that will matter at that time. And it's so powerful. And you see where you land in that meditation. It's so powerful. And nothing can stop death. Life's being subtracted from and never added to. We have no time to practice Dharma. Lifespan's not fixed where we live. It's a lot easier to die than stay alive. There's a lot more causes for death in life. This body, so easy to kill, dies so easily. When we're dying, our friends can't help. Our money can't help. Material things can't help. Only the Dharma can help. So you see now this sense of urgency that's created. We have a teacher. We have the teachings. We know how great they are. We know how great the lineage is, great the teachings are. We know how to listen to them. We have a teacher. We have this opportunity. We're humans. We can do it. But now there's urgency. Now we're going to die. So this sets up, and we won't go into the next section. But this sets up then, okay, so what happens then? Lama Tsongkhapa is going to tell us what happens then about, the realms and karma and so forth as we get in, to the next subjects. Okay, so I have this basis, right? It's so incredible. I'm going to die, though. I don't know when. The only thing that'll help me is Dharma. And what's going to happen when I die? What are my options? And what could they be? And how could they make them different? That's what the Lam Rim is. Here are the facts. These are your options. This is what can happen. This is how this happens. This is how this happens. What would you like to do about it? If you don't know how all of it happens, if you don't know what you're trying to emerge from, how would you ever day and night do something about getting out of cyclic existence? If you had no idea how bad it really was, if you had no idea about the 8 types of suffering and the 6 types of suffering and the 3 types of suffering, you had no idea that that was reality, and especially that 3rd type of suffering that was just going to keep going like a merry-go-round that, never runs out of juice. All right, wait, that's a carousel. This is a merry-go-round, a merry-go-round that never runs out of juice, right? You're just going high to low and high to low, like buckets on a water wheel, as Chandrakirti says in the beginning of the entrance to the middle way. And then Lama Tsongkhapa gives a beautiful commentary on why you're like buckets on a water wheel. And we'll go over that another time. But really, in the illuminating the intent Lama Tsongkhapa's Umagomorapsa, we see that's the commentary on Chandrakirti's entrance to the middle way. And in Chandrakirti's entrance to the middle way, he says that it's rough quote, sentient beings first grasp at I, then grasp at mine, and independence upon this, they turn like buckets on a water wheel in cyclic existence. So we can see that it's this ignorance that grasps at everything incorrectly, that forces us into experience again and again and again and again. And we have to know all the details that surround that process in order for us to really take control of that process, right? Like anybody who, so for instance, if you were to, go into, if you were going to take a company over, you would have to know exactly what was what first to take control of the process, right? You would have to know what they sell, right? You'd have to know where they sold it and if they were selling something and how they did it and how many employees. You would have to know current state in a complete way to be able to do something about it, right? In order to say, in the terms of a company that's failing, you're a company, say you're come into a company that's failing, you're a company that's failing, you're in cyclic existence, right? You have to know why it's failing, right? And then make it stop failing. You obviously, if you're failing, if you don't know why you're failing, how would you ever fix it? And then if you don't know why there's an urgency to fix it, why would you do it today? You could know why you're failing. Oh, it's because I have this ignorance. Oh, so what? I'll do something about it tomorrow. If you just study Madhyamika, oh yeah, things are not truly established because they dependently originate. They come into being through imputation, and it's all through the power of my naming, and it's a subjective experience, and there's no objective reality. How is that going to make you right day and night want to get out of cyclic existence? Oh, what's that gonna, how's that gonna push you? And then we see later, and we get into the 6 perfections, Lama Tsongkhapa says, it's this 9-step meditation, 9-reason meditation that pushes you to do those 6 perfections, that makes the bodhisattva willing to work day and night, that made the bodhisattva get into a position where they were willing to endure the hardships of samsara, right? Because they know there's such a sense of urgency. And then you turn this sense of urgency into your bodhicitta meditation as well. Like I said about the leisure and opportunity, now you're looking at all sentient beings and saying, how nice it would be if they understood. See where I'm going with this? That death will come and nothing can stop it, right? Life's always being subtracted from and never added to. They're acting out in the way that they are. They have no idea that any moment they could die. You see how that can make compassion. You understand it for yourself. If it's saturated your mind and you believe it so much, when you see someone acting like that, that would maybe be your first thought. They have no idea they're going to die. They have this human basis of life and leisure and opportunity. They don't know they're going to die. They don't know that the only thing that can help them is Dharma, and everything they're doing right now is going to make them suffer so much more than I'm suffering right now. It allows you to say, oh my gosh, that person isn't understanding the nature of things at all. And that's why Shanti Deva says, if you haven't even dreamed of your own situation, what are you going to do about somebody else's? Come on, you paraphrased, obviously. What are you going to do for someone else if you don't know about your own situation? You're going to have some sugar cane kind of fake surface level, everyone thinks you're like the most compassionate person in the world thing. And then you really don't have any foundation in it. And it would just take that person to like rub you the wrong way or just not behave the way you want. Geshe Dorji Damdu said, yes, I'm a very generous person. I'm walking down the street. I see a homeless person. I have a pocket full of money. Can I have $1? Yes, absolutely. No problem. Oh, I feel so good. I'm such a generous person. May I have $10? Starts to feel a little different. Well, $10. I give it $1. Can I have all the money in your pocket? You start to see, right? How generous are you? Are you that person? Even if you had it all the money in your pocket was $200. You may have I don't know how much you have in the bank, right? However much. I have $46. So we're not going too far. But say you have thousands of dollars in the bank, you have $200 in your pocket. If that person you knew needed it, if they were like, may I borrow $1, and you gave it to them, and they said, can I have every dollar you have? Would it be automatic if you had the means, it's not going to make you homeless? Would your automatic reaction just be to hand it? That's when you see. That's when you start to see. I'm not saying go give all your money away at all. I'm just trying to give an example of, oh, I'm such a generous person. You start to feel, well, may I have $1? Yes. Well, how about 10? Oh, okay. You have a first thought that's a lot. Okay. How about 100 if you have 200? Oh my God, it's half my money in my pocket, right? I don't even know if I have my ATM card. What if I see a shirt I like? Right? Like that. Start to think about ourselves real quick in the midst of our generosity. And a bodhisattva isn't operating under that kind of those conditions. And I love it when I say, oh, they're such bodhisattvas. Are you sure? Because that's a super, super realized being, who would give you their eye if you really needed it. Way realized. Bodhicitta is something that means they have renunciation. They day and night wanted to get out of cyclic existence, so they decided to help you. They didn't have a thought in the morning, noon, or night, except what do I have to do to get liberated? How do I get to nirvana? That's all they thought about, right? Is that all you think about? So just questions we have to ask ourselves. I ask myself every day. When I look in the mirror of the Dharma, it's very easy to get ahead of ourselves and say, oh, I really understand this. And that just shows, maybe in some of the earlier subjects, you could say, okay, I understand this intellectually, but the minute you start to think some of these deeper subjects, like the human life of leisure and opportunity and spiritual, relying on a spiritual friend, are basic topics that are kind of unnecessary to go over. You haven't realized them. Because I think that if, Khenso Geshe Wandak was in this room right now, he would probably love to listen to a teaching on leisure and opportunity for 8 hours straight. I remember seeing him, he did an initiation with His Holiness on Zoom, not private, but, how he gives the initiations. And we had all of the blindfolds and everything you'd use when you do an initiation, just from prior ones. We had them at our house. So I didn't do it with him. He came in the room I'm in right now, and he sat here, and it was hours long, a couple hours long, for the 1,000-arm Chen Rezig initiation His Holiness gave, not the recent one, before. It was hours and hours long. And Rinpoche, I was peeking in, he was putting the blindfold on, and he was doing all of the steps and doing all the different mudras and following along with the practice as if he had never heard it before. And it was just so, and I remember walking in the room after it was done, and, it was just this glow that he had. And he was so happy that he had just gotten an action tantra initiation. And we think, oh, action tantra, that's the lowest tantra, and you see, I'm more of a highest yoga tantra fan, but, I'll do the action tantra, because we do that stuff, I'm not saying that's how I feel, but we can at times, right? Be like, well, why would I practice the lower one? It says lower right there. And then you see Khenso Geshe Wandak just on the edge of his seat. He's taken given a million Chen Rezig initiations, right? And he's just there because he understands that everything that the Buddha said is so deep, such a deep ocean. And Geshe-la says, we kind of take things for granted a bit because we're spoon-fed, right? We had all these Indian pandits, be able to take it apart. And then it gets to Tibet, And they're like, they get it to a level, and then they get it to a more subtle level, and then to a more subtle level. And then, it's a commentary of a commentary, and everyone's checking it all along. No one gets to put out trash, as we would say around here. No one gets to do that because there's critical analysis going on in the tradition. So no one gets to say anything that's out of order with what, Buddha Shakyamuni taught in the sutras and tantras. No one's allowed to do that in this tradition. I mean, you can do it for a minute, but everyone will just stop listening to you and just say, yeah, that's the guy who says it wrong. They even in the monastery, they can be like, no, he really didn't get it. He didn't get it, like the very matter of fact about that. So anyway, my point of all of this is that please look at all of these topics in a very deep way. Don't look at them as, oh, it's kind of easy. Understand that it was handed to us in a format that we can intellectually understand because of it, because of all of the profound view and extensive deeds lineage. Then Atisha grabbed them both and hugged them. And then Drone Tompa hugged them and gave them to the Kadampa masters. Then all the beautiful teachings came from there, right? And even before that, of course, Padmasambhava and Chandrarashita and Kamalashila came and hugged them at Sanyik Monastery, right? All of these teachings were hugged by these great masters. And then Lama Tsongkhapa shows up, and hugs all of the profound deeds and excellent view and blessings lineage of the Tantra lineage of Tilo and Naro, and then make sure that it stays pure and rips it apart and looks at it so clearly, and all these great pandits that come after that do the same, and all of the traditions. We have so many great masters, Sakya Pandita and Longchenpa, and just so many great masters in all of these traditions that tear this apart, and then the Dalai Lamas, and then all of the commentators of Drepung Sera, Ganden, and so forth. And then they get to us from Khenser Geshe Wandak, and we get it in a palatable format and think it may be easy, but realize that these masters wrote books and books and books on this, being like, hello, I'm trying to tell you that this is really important. I'm trying to tell you that this very basic stuff that you don't find so fun and so interesting is the thing that's going to change your mind into a Buddha and do it the quickest. And Rinpoche always said these foundational teachings are the things that will really, really help us. And when we combine them with the concentrations and the understandings at a higher level, it will be like the gasoline for the fire, right? Instead of just trying to kind of blow on it, rubbing sticks together, it'll be like, putting a torch with gasoline in there, and it'll allow the teachings to just rise up very, very quickly, because the proper things were arranged in order to make that happen. If we don't have the foundational practices, we have an incomplete path. If we have an incomplete path, we have an incomplete realization. If we don't have a complete small scope path, we won't not go to the lower realms. We don't have a complete medium scope path, we will return to cyclic existence. We don't have a complete great scope path, we won't become a Buddha. So it's that clear. So we have to have a complete path, and never, as Lama Tsongkhapa said, and I'll end with this, be satisfied with just partial instructions. Never think you understand something just because the words in English mean something. Dive into each of them. The Tibetan Buddhist tradition has what's called word commentaries. You look at every word, look at the etymology of the word. Why was that word used instead of another word? So do that with the words that we have in English. You'll see the lexicon's a little difficult in English because no one's settled on a word for certain things. So you have to become very, very skilled in knowing what people are talking about when they're translating, and having a partial understanding of the path, having an incomplete view of what dependent origination really means, not understanding that the lower schools have a different understanding of dependent origination than the higher schools, not understanding dependent origination as dependent origination of causes and conditions, dependent origination of wholes and parts, and dependent origination through nominal designation, and not understanding that the nominal designation that brings things, that things come into being through the power of, is the ultimate dependent origination that the Madhyamika Prasangika school talks about. Not understanding how something doesn't come into being through itself, other, a collection of both, or causelessly. Not understanding these things in a complete way will make you read things in a partial way and misunderstand them in a complete way. So, and it's just so clear to me that that's what's going on. The other day I was watching on TikTok, which is going swimmingly. I think there's like almost 600 people now following, tons of questions being fired off. People are hungry for spirituality and hungry for Buddhism. And there's a whole lot of wrong ideas being there. I saw the most overproduced video the other day. The guy looked like an expert in a studio. The most important teaching the Buddha ever gave was on dependent origination. And then he proceeds to give a teaching on nihilism, complete nihilism, for like a minute and a half or two. There were like hundreds of thousands of likes on it because he's one of the influencer folks. So there's just wrong view, just being like garden hosed all over people who are seeking something because they're dissatisfied. They're going like this because they're so unhappy all day. You want to find unhappiness, find people who can only stare at a thing and look at other people's lives. You want to find a crew that's looking for something different. So it's really interesting to see what comes from an impartial understanding, reading one or two books and being like, okay, the words will reveal their meaning to me. No, they won't. No, they won't. Stop. Stop with that nonsense. If you're Milarepa, maybe you are. Maybe you're like some Tolku that hasn't been recognized. Probably. It's probably you and only you. You know, you're just going to hear a few words and then just go chop some wood and you're good. You'll hear a few words, you'll be chopping wood, and then those words are going to make you understand the clear light mind. And that's all you've got to do. No, you've got to study. You have to have the wisdom arisen from hearing, analysis, and meditation. And that analysis, that understanding, that inferential understanding of those words, what they mean, that you've gone through cognitively with your analysis, critical analysis, back and forth, inside and out, will produce the realizations. That critical analysis will. But the words themselves, the words only have meaning when we apply a meaning to them. Come on, guys. Words don't have inherent meaning. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. So stop. Stop with nonsensical teachings that aren't true because you don't want to study. Engage in the studies that will actually achieve realization. And the only reason I'm so emphatic about this is because the wrong teachings are the reason people have to suffer. It's the reason that Buddha spent all that time. He got two teachers, realized that they had realized completely high points of concentration and thought they were liberated. They relied on their minds and thought they were liberated. The Buddha shucked those two teachers off and then realized it even deeper. We've got to be willing to do what the Buddha did. And the only way we will know is if we study, if we use logic, we use understanding, and look at the words and look at what commentators said and said that. I don't agree with that commentary. I do it all the time. I used to go in and disagree with Lama Tsongkhapa until Rinpoche showed me, you know, I can't do it anymore. But every time Rinpoche would come back with some logical reason and, you know, korsum me. And that's what you do when someone says something that's illogical. Korsum in debate. Yeah, I'm just so grateful for this tradition of analysis and how Lama Tsongkhapa proves to us and Kamala Shila proves to us that you need it. And we see what happened in Tibet with this idea of emptying your mind, right? The Chinese abbot Hashang, who had the great debate with Kamala Shila, and it was being spread all over Tibet. And we see the teaching still in Tibet of this idea of emptying your mind, make your mind like the sky and think of nothing else. Take away all of your cognitive thought. Don't think about anything else. Experience the most subtle level of it. Experience an even more subtle level. You're getting deeper. You're almost there, right? You really have to step by step start to just get to that subtle level. And when you start to really study the tantras and you start to study how all of that works, it's the same step by step, but those steps are compressed. So they're like so much more powerful, like I talked about last time. You know, it allows every moment of our existence to have a million virtues instead of one if we practice Tantrayana. And it isn't changing time, it's changing our relationship to our ability to create virtue in the time we have. And the only way we can do that are the foundational practices. When you look at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stages of the Tantric path, it begins with refuge. So that's all. That's what I have to say today. Sorry, I was a little fired up at the end, but you have to understand, I'm on this thing, like posting things. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to like Buddha just to see like what people like and are listening to. And it's like, whoa, wow. Really few and far between in terms of qualifications. Not saying I'm super the highest qualification, but maybe on there. But anyway, I will end with that and say thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, cool. We'll do the concluding prayers. And I would encourage anyone who's listening to this, it's a scholar, if you can, start to give talks on those different apps. You know, we can all talk to each other. We can all go to the places where we all know we are and sound really smart and be impressed with each other. But the Buddha went to the town where ordinary people were and sparked up conversations with them to try to lead them to the truth, not to proselytize, just to help sentient beings. Try it. All right. The 8 verses for training the mind by Geshe Langri Tamba. With the determination to accomplish the highest welfare of all sentient beings who surpass even a wish-granting jewel, I will learn to hold them supremely dear. Whenever I associate with others, I will learn to think of myself as the lowest amongst all and respectively hold others to be supreme from the very depths of my heart. In all actions, I will learn to search into my mind, and as soon as a disturbing emotion arises, endangering myself and others, I will firmly face and avert it. I will learn to cherish ill-natured beings and those oppressed by strong misdeeds and sufferings as if I had found a precious treasure difficult to find. When others out of jealousy treat me badly with abuse, slander, and the like, I will learn to take all loss and offer victory to them. When the one whom I benefited with great hope unreasonably hurts me very badly, I will learn to view that person as an excellent spiritual guide. In short, I will learn to offer to everyone without exception all help and happiness directly and indirectly, and respectfully take upon myself all the harm and suffering of my mothers. I will learn to keep all these practices undefiled by the stains of the 8 worldly concerns, and by understanding all phenomena as like illusion, be released from the bondage of attachment. Once again, imagine all the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas in the space in front of you, so full of bliss, and all the sentient beings around you, and we'll make a Thanksgiving mandala offering. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure land. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All powerful, Avalokiteshvara, Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. I pray that we in all our lives are never separated from Khensur Geshe Wandak in whatever form he or she chooses to show us, whether it's in the emanation body or in the enjoyment body when we're Arya Bodhisattvas. In all our lives, may we always meet with this perfect teacher. And when we become Buddhas, may we help him or her help all sentient beings become Buddhas. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you. I hope you have a wonderful week and make these teachings part of your mind, because if you do, your mind will be better. Thanks. See you next time.
Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.
Take care.